Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to today's session. We're glad to have you here. Um, so, Welcome to this session brought to you by Best School to Work, a program of T4 Education. My name is Marin Moret. I am Head of Strategic Partnerships at T4, and I will be your host today. Please tell us as you join using the chat box who you are, your name, where you're joining from, so that we get a better understanding of the audience on the other side of our screens. Just for your awareness, this is a 1 hour webinar. We have a packed presentation, so I'm going to do a very short introduction. If you need to leave before the ending time, don't worry. We are recording this session and we're going to send the recording afterwards, also for those of you who haven't been able to join. Um, and I also want to say, please feel free to use the chat box to drop questions throughout the session, and we are going to be able to pick up on those questions towards the end of the session. So, as way of introduction of T4 Education, for those of you who are not familiarized with us, we are a global organization that works with schools and educators across the world. And all of our programs are anchored on the mission of powering high performance in schools. So everything we do looks at elevating, uplifting schools, and really like equipping them to make them high performing, right? So one of our core programs is Best School to Work, which is a certification program for schools. And the idea is that what Best School to Work does is through a framework and a survey, a standardized survey mechanism, we try to understand and diagnose what the school culture, what the culture of a school looks like, and equip you and give you the information and data that you need to understand how to improve your school based on what your culture looks like, right? So what we do is we look at things like leadership, collaboration, environment, wellness. Those are like our four main pillars. And what we do is we try to understand what this looks like from the standpoint of your employees and your staff, because we understand that's like the starting point to a safe, to a healthy, to a sustainable environment, because we believe that where the staff thrives, the rest of the community is going to thrive, right? So what we do is try to understand that, triangle information, and give you a really, really good diagnose of your school culture for those of you who are trying to understand where you're standing at. And if we look at leadership as one of our pillars in our framework, there are two elements of leadership that oftenly score very low, and it really calls our attention, which is professional development and coaching. Actually, coaching as a form of professional development. And that's why today's session, we're bringing three amazing experts that are they are based in the US to present an effective model on coaching for schools. So as you know, periodically we host these webinars to like delve into these topics and try to understand, look at strategies, look at models, look at best practices to equip you with really good tools and programs and initiatives in order to help you improve. So this is what this webinar is for. It's open to everyone, regardless of you being part of Best School to Work or not, which, by the way, we invite you to explore Best School to Work and be able to, if you have any questions, reach out. We'd love to partner up with all the schools across the world in order to analyze and understand your school culture. So our experts today, one of them has already been a presenter for us before. So Professor Megan Tschannen-Moran, she already presented on the topic of, hi Megan, on the topic of trust before. It was an excellent session. And we are bringing her today again because she has developed a specific model on coaching that she's going to present today. And she also has brought her other two colleagues, who are George Manthey and Jeanie Cash, who are going to come after her. So hi, George, and hi, Jeanie. They are both so. Megan is a professor emeritus at William and Mary College in Virginia in the US and a renowned expert in education and leadership. And George and Jeannie are also both award-winning experts in educational leadership. They are partners at Lead Learner Associates, which is an organization that trains school districts and school leaders on leadership development. And they carry a wealth of experience and knowledge from the years at leadership levels at school districts in California. So, having made that brief introduction, I want to say thank you for being here today with us. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing this knowledge with us. And I will now pass on to Megan, who will kick off this presentation. As I said before, for the audience, please drop your questions on the chat box, and we're going to pick them up towards the end of the session. Thank you very much, and Megan, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. We are just delighted to be here with all of you from around the globe in this little space and time in cyberspace. So we just are honored to have the opportunity to share our ideas and thoughts with you. And we hope that this is going to really support and enhance the very important work that you do as educators in what all of the various contexts that you're coming to this conversation with. And we've titled our presentation, Creating a Strong School Culture Through Conversation. And what we hope to share with you, we hope will lead to richer and more effective and more powerful conversations in schools. The school culture is really about primarily about the shared values of a group of people in the schools. And those shared values are largely transmitted through conversations. So if we can enhance the quality of conversations, we can enhance the school. As Maren said, that's a focus of the whole organization of T4 and Best Schools, is recognizing that if we improve the culture and if we do that through improved conversations, our outcomes are going to be better for all of those who are involved. All right, let me see if I can get this to go. So our presentation is based on a model of coaching that my husband and I developed. He was not an educator. He was a business and life coach. And as he was receiving training in being a life coach and emerging as a leader in the coaching world, then there started to be people in schools called coaches. And I'm like, oh, well, this is cool because there's this whole profession of coaching. And we in schools, we in education ought to benefit from that. And early on, that didn't seem to be happening. We in education were kind of just making it up as we went along. I would meet people who were coaches in those early days and ask, well, what kind of training did you have? And they said, we didn't get any training. Like, well, what kind of models are you using? We don't have any models. I was like, well, how's it going? And I would get a sad look. I was like, I'm getting a lot of resistance. People were not enjoying having an untrained coach show up in their world and wag their finger at them. I think that gets all of us a little bit with our backup. So we developed this coaching model. I was a new professor at the time and so interested in the knowledge base. We'll get into the knowledge base. But first, the definition of evocative coaching is we say that it is calling forth motivation and movement in people through conversation and a way of being, so they achieve desired outcomes and enhance the quality of life. So we want to call forth motivation. We're not going to get anywhere when people are not motivated. So we want to pay attention to to their motivation. And for this, we draw heavily on the knowledge base around teacher self-efficacy or self-efficacy, leadership self-efficacy as well. And what we want to bring about then is movement. We want to move forward. So, if somebody gets real motivated, but they don't go anywhere, we haven't done our job. We want to move them into more effective, enhanced practice so that they can be more successful. And our means for doing that is through conversation, as we've already said, but also as a way of being, how we show up to the conversation is going to have a huge impact on how it comes across to the person who we are trying to help. We may have really wonderful intentions, but if our way of being, our way of showing up is doesn't have the right energy, what we're likely to get is a lot of that resistance. So we often say that the most important moment in a coaching conversation may be the moment right before it begins, because this is the moment where we kind of get our heads straight, clear away all of the myriad things that we have going on in our heads, and come to fully focus on our intention to be helpful to the person that we're talking to. And then we want them to achieve desired outcomes and enhance their quality of life. Um, I think it's miserable to be lousy at whatever job you have, but I think to be a lousy educator is a particularly miserable place to be. Partly because young people can be so clever and so creative in expressing their displeasure when they don't feel like they're learning or that the educator is doing their job properly. So as they get better at teaching, it's going to also, or leading, it's going to enhance their quality of life. So as I said, we grounded our model in three large bodies of knowledge. One of them is person-centered psychology, where we want to keep our focus on the person whose professional progress we want to enhance. And we do that through raising their awareness, through enhancing their recognition of the kinds of choices that they have. They're not just stuck. And then that they have responsibility. That choice means that they also have responsibility. We also grounded it in work around social emotional intelligence. In the past decade or two, there has really been an increased awareness about the importance of social emotional intelligence and how central that is to our being able to accomplish our mission as educators, and to support our students to become effective adults and effective citizens in wherever the context they may be. And then we grounded in positive psychology, and in particular, a process called appreciative inquiry, where we go on a treasure hunt looking for places, even if they're just glimmers, places where this person is being successful, and interrogating how are they becoming as successful as they are, and then let's build on that. And that's part of what helps build a sense of self-efficacy. It's like, oh, I can do this, and so now I'm more engaged and more interested in moving forward. We also said that our focus in our coaching conversations is centered around what we call the 5 concerns of coaching. The first is consciousness. We really want to raise this person's awareness, as you saw in the person-centered coaching, but an awareness of what's really going on. And we try to strip away the sense of judgment and blame, because those kind of taint our awareness of what's really going on. We want to just focus on what's happening now, and then how can we move forward. There also, we want to enhance a sense of connection. There's certainly a connection between the coach and the person being coached, but also the connections that they have. We want to think about the kind of connections they have in their professional life and how those are working or not working and how they might be enhanced. We, of course, want to enhance their sense of competence and improve their practice as well, and through that, increase their contribution, what they're able to contribute to the school as a whole or the system as a whole. And then we want to bring a sense of a kind of playful energy that leads to creativity so that we can play with ideas and and come up with new and different and better answers than we have when we felt stuck, when they felt stuck. And the model then is based around four, we like to think of them as dance steps, not something to be moved through 1, 2, 3, 4 in a very wooden kind of way, but four phases, four skill sets that we bring to the coaching conversation to marshal in ways that serve the needs of that particular time and place. So first, uh, our role as coaches is to listen for the kinds of stories that they are bringing forward. What are the kind of stories in their head? And are those stories serving them, or are they getting in the way? Then we want to express empathy. We want to receive those stories with understanding and a lack of judgment. And then we want to delve into an inquiry into what their strengths, what's working, what can we build on, what have we got here as a place to start, that can move forward. And then we want to design a way forward using the skills and the tools of design thinking. So, and with that, I will turn it over to George.
Sorry, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Megan. And I would just wanted to share my delight in being here with all of you today. It's tempting. Megan just showed you the 4 steps of evocative coaching, but we don't start with them. As we approach a coaching conversation, the first question we have is, how am I showing up? Because if my mind is elsewhere, my email, the last meeting, what I'm going to say next, then the coaching is already diminished. And it not just for the coachee, but for us. So when we evocative coaching, we believe this, that without presence, even the best strategies fall flat. So before we think about tools, we attend to presence because that's what actually evokes the greatness. There are at least 3 energies we can bring into a coaching conversation. We choose based on what the coachee needs and not what we're in the mood for. So the first, as you see, is calm assurance. I'm not alarmed, so you don't have to be either. My certainty is greater than your doubt. And the second is playfulness. Coaching is serious work, but it doesn't have to feel serious. Playfulness brings curiosity and opens new possibilities. And that's, of course, the third. It's openness to possibility. If we're optimistic, um, then our coaches will be also. All 3 matter. And the situation tells us which to lead with. So before we begin, we don't start with the agenda. We start by reading the room, even if the room is just one person. Our goal is simple, to stop and calm the frenzy and not contribute to it. Because sometimes we walk in carrying the frenzy ourselves. So we ask, am I bringing calm or am I adding noise? And we begin with an energy check-in. We don't jump into business right away, but we ask, where are you right now? Because if we don't ask, we're often wrong. So we ask a question just like these, as silly as some might sound. Um, what time of the day would you associate with your energy right now? I'd like you to respond to that in the chat. If you're raring to go, you might respond with 8 a.m. or 0800, depending on your practice. If you're running out of steam, you might say 11 p.m. or 2300 hours. If you're hungry right now, you might respond with noon. So put your response in the chat right now so I have a sense of what your energy level is. It looks like we've got a variety of responses. And thanks for sharing. That gives me a sense of where we are and what we're working with. And then I'm just curious about this. Could you also just put in what time of day it was for you when you started this session? So for me, it was 8 a.m. So I'd put in 8 a.m. But just put in what time it was when the session started. Just gives me a sense of how we're spread out around the room, around the room. Thank you. All right. Thanks for sharing those things. So when we ask people, as I was saying, we get that information about them, we meet people where they are, and then we can move into the rhythm of listening, empathizing, appreciating, and designing. And of course, it all starts with listening. So Jeanie, if you got your slides to work, I'll turn it over to you. Otherwise, I will advance them for you.
Okay, it said I had to wait for you to stop sharing before I could share.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I do not have the option to share.
I'll bring up my slides for you.
I had the option just a moment ago, and then when it's not there now on my.
It's not there for me either, Daniel. Oh, yes, it is.
Okay. I am now sharing my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
George, you're going to have to stop.
Oh, sorry. You got it, huh? I don't. Oh, there we go.
Can
Okay.
you see? Is that my screen?
No, we just see you.
Okay. How about now?
You got it.
Yay!
All right.
I got it.
Okay. Listening is listed first in the LEAD model of evocative coaching because it's so critical to invite the person that we're working with to tell us stories about themselves. We want to hear stories about their goals, their actions, their struggles, and their accomplishments. And when we invite them to tell stories about a time when they felt engaged, excited, or challenged, it opens the door to acceptance, to trust, and it enables us as coaches to elicit what's on their mind rather than what's on our mind. The secret is learning how to listen mindfully, quietly, and reflectively. We listen in a safe, no fault zone without judgment. And we tend to listen sometimes with only one ear because as coaches, we're thinking about what we want to say next because we've been there and done that. And we want to put on our fix-it hat and help them. It's out of our desire to help that we want to tell them what to do. And I will be vulnerable and tell you that listening has been my greatest challenge in my years of coaching because the way I process in my thinking is to talk out loud. And so really having to discipline myself to be a quiet, mindful, and reflective listener is something that I've really worked on in my coaching because out of a desire to help, I wanted to tell them what to do. And so my thinking was my talking, and I've really been working on that. So I'm right now, I'd like you just to focus on listening mindfully, quietly, and reflectively. Whatever you have in your hand, put it down. Just take a moment and just listen very quietly while I read this poem to you. When I ask you to listen to me and you start giving advice, you have not done what I ask. When I ask you to listen to me and you begin to tell me why I shouldn't feel that way, you're trampling on my feelings. When I ask you to listen to me and you feel you have to do something to solve my problem, you have failed me, strange as that may seem. Listen. All I ask is that you listen, not talk or do, just hear me. Advice is cheap. 50 cents will get you Dear Abby in the newspaper. I can do for myself. I'm not helpless. I might be discouraged and faltering, but I'm not helpless. When you do something for me that I can and need to do for myself, you contribute to my fear and weakness. But when you accept as a simple fact that I do feel what I feel, no matter how irrational, then I can quit trying to convince you and get about the business of understanding what's behind my irrational feeling. When that's clear, the answers are obvious and I don't need advice. Originally, the author of the poem was thought to be anonymous, but it was later discovered by Bob that it was actually written by a medical doctor. So we want to look at what you get when you rearrange the letters to the word listen. I thought this was interesting because you can take those letters and you can turn them into the word silent. And that's what we need to consciously work on in our coaching, because listening to their story takes us to the heart of their experience, their emotions, where truth and meaning wait to be discovered. As you dive deeper into story listening, you'll understand the importance of what we refer to as imaginative listening. And this was so interesting to me, and I love using this strategy in my coaching and my listening because it really helps us to invite people to retell stories from different perspectives. It helps to open the door to new understanding and possibilities, which can be transformational. And we invite the person that we're working with to imagine new scenarios and interpretations of their experiences. The vantage point is when we can invite that person that we're working with to imagine the perspective of others. In other words, if they have a concern about another person, let's say that person's name is Madison, and they're talking to you about Madison, and you invite them to tell the same story through Madison's eyes. It gives them a different perspective to think about. What would Madison say if she were telling me this story? The pivot point is when we help the person we're coaching to think about the impact of different decisions and to ask appreciative questions such as, what would it look like to your staff if you had made the decision to choose next week instead of Friday afternoon for the staff meeting? Looking at the outcomes of making an alternative decision, it really helps the person see the bigger picture and how that decision might impact others. The third one that you see on the screen is the lesson point, and that is just encouraging that person that you're working with to reflect on what they've learned from a given situation that they're sharing with you. We take away lessons learned from the experience when we're sharing our story. No, they can't go back and do it over again. They can't redo it, but they can learn from it and move forward, and they can brainstorm ways with their coach to move forward. I keep a journal when I'm coaching, and I will tell the person that I'm working with, I hope you don't mind if I take a few notes because I want to remember to follow up on what we've talked about. And so I will take a few notes. And then at the top of my page, just because listening is something I really want to purposefully and mindfully work on, I put those letters wait and see. That so resonated with me. And it's such a reminder for me to focus on why am I talking and stop explaining everything. And that's just a reminder for Jeanie in her coaching to listen. And as we listen to stories and invite them to tell their stories through this imaginative listening, then we can move forward to the next important step called empathy.
Thank you, Jeanie. Let me see, how do I get this to go full screen? I need to go from the current slide. I think there we go. All right. Thank you, Jeanie. As Jeanie said, listening for stories is really sets the context for our coaching conversations. And we want to receive these stories with empathy so that the person doesn't feel alone in what it is they're going through. They know that we are there with them. And so building this into our model, actually, in the early aughts, when we were developing our model, we were a little bit shy initially about having empathy part of the model because we thought people will think it's too touchy-feely, that it would, it's too soft. But then about the same time as our book was coming out, there were some books coming out of Stanford in the design thinking process, and those begin with empathy. So if the big boys were saying empathy was important, we figured we couldn't be too far off the mark. And so in finding a body of knowledge to support uh, the skills of expressing empathy, we have drawn on the work of Marshall Rosenberg and a process that he called nonviolent communication, but also is called compassionate communication. And so this is just a depiction of the process, the beginning that I developed as a way to convey this body of knowledge. And it starts, our expression of empathy starts with a stimulus. So if the person we are offering empathy to, including ourselves, if we are needing some self-empathy, it starts with becoming aware of our emotions. And our emotions, that's their job, is to get our attention. So, so those are often not hard to find, especially if they are strong emotions. So it's a stimulus. It could be evoking some very positive emotions for us, or it could be evoking some feelings of hurt or anger or discouragement, whatever it is. But especially if these are less happy emotions, so we come to a point of choice to either correct or connect. And if what's been stirred up for us about a situation or an observation, something that's happened, our intention for most of us is to correct. Our initial intention is to correct the person. We want to wag our finger at them and say, that was so wrong, that was bad, that was inappropriate. And we move through into this space that Marshall Rosenberg called playing the game of who's right. He said, we all know that game. It's the game where nobody wins. So when we move down into that playing the game of who's right, we are likely to get into what's sometimes called the 4 Ds of disconnection, meaning we are less connected with this other person's humanity. We are most aware of our own hurt and anger. And so we want to first diagnose. We might say this person is lazy or inappropriate, that was wrong. We might say, he's to blame or she's cray cray. Any kind of diagnosis might disconnect us from the humanity and a sense of connection to the other person. We might deny responsibility. We might say, well, I had no choice. I had to do what I did because I had no choice in the matter. We also might get into an energy of demanding. I demand that you reverse course. I demand that you apologize. I demand or I insist. And that is part of playing the game of who's right, is because it is likely to cook up some resistance and to our being able to move forward with the other person, because it will stir up their autonomy needs. Even if it's a course of action that they might have been willing to do, as soon as they sense that it's something that we are demanding, they're just, all of us kind of have an inner 2-year-old that just says no. It just feels good to say no if somebody is pushing at us. And finally, we might have some thoughts about a sense of what people deserve. Marshall Rosenberg said that deserve was the most violent word in the English language. And he said that because we can, when we think that somebody is bad or evil or our enemy, or we can get pleasure in seeing, witnessing, or inflicting harm or pain on that other person. It also can lead to a sense of entitlement for us. We can say, well, I deserve better than this, and can bring an energy that again disconnects us from the humanity of the other person. So the problem with playing the game of who's right is that it's kind of a closed system. Once we choose that path, we can jangle around and jangle around, but we don't tend to get anywhere. And so if we've jangled around long enough and we're feeling frustrated with it, we have the opportunity, all of us now being aware of this from to this day forward, we have the opportunity to come back to the beginning and switch our intention. Instead of our intention to correct, we can choose the intention to connect. And through that, we will express an observation of what has been happening, but strip away the evaluations. So strip away the sense of you're lazy or wrong or bad, and just describe, well, when I walked into the room, I saw this happen, or I heard you say. And that's an easier space for us to be able to connect with the other person and understand what's going on with them, understand what did it stir up for us. So then next we engage in exploration. We get curious about what are the feelings that have been stirred up and what are those trying to tell us. In this process, I like to think of feelings like a little indicator light that's in my dashboard of my car, and I'm driving along thinking of other things, or just paying attention to traffic, and then suddenly I see a little light come on, and it's ding, and it makes me aware that, oh, I'm getting low on gas. I better get a strategy for how am I going to get more gas soon. And so I might start thinking about that. Well, I like to think about feelings in the same way. They get our attention, they stop us in our tracks, and they make us pay attention. And what they invite us to pay attention to are the needs, the underlying needs that have been stirred up. And that's really the heart of empathy. That's really the heart of the matter. And once we've understood that, and once we feel a sense of connection with ourselves, that we have a greater understanding what's going on with us, or we have a greater, we have a greater sense of connection with the person that we are dealing with, then we are in a space to navigate and negotiate a way forward. And that is what we call opening up the realm of possibilities. So one of the things that we want to know about, or explore, be curious about in terms of feelings, are they happy feelings, positive feelings, energizing, and kinds of feelings? And that's the column on the right-hand side. And I've never, as articulate as we all can be, most of us are not that articulate about our feelings. So it can be really helpful to have a list of feelings. And so we've arranged it here in kind of groups of feelings that might help you to find the language. And it turns out it's really helpful, whether our feelings are happy and energetic feelings or that they might be more difficult or painful feelings. So the column on the left are feelings that are a little bit more difficult. But in this process, we value them because of the ways they get our attention and because the ways they lead to an inquiry as to what are the needs that are underlying these feelings that have come up. And so we have my husband developed this wheel of needs where he arranged these sets of needs along 5 continuums that are sets of needs that tend to be in a little bit of tension with each other. So we all need a basic needs met. We need food, we need shelter. That's down in the middle of the bottom, those sustenance needs. But we also have a need for a sense of meaning and purpose that comes in the opposition. So we want to have a rhythm between meeting our needs for survival and then meeting our needs for transcendence. That if we're all spending all of our time working on the needs for transcendence, and at some point we're going to need to go get something to eat. At some point we're going to need to rest a little bit. So we unless we want to die for the cause, we have to be thinking about both. Similarly, we may have a need for work and rest. We want those to be in rhythm. If we're feeling really worn out, we've just really been investing a lot of energy in work, the need for rest starts to become more and more urgent. And so to have vitality, as you see in the middle, we want a rhythm between the two. We want some rhythm between safety. Most sets of needs talk about how much we need safety, but all safety all the time is boring. There's no learning, there's no growth. So we also want some challenge, and we may have different levels of how much challenge we want. Maybe some of us can think of people that we know are kind of daredevils. They like a lot of challenge and a little less safety. But even those daredevils need some time where they have some safety and where they can calm down. We have a need for community. Again, we all recognize the need for belonging, but we also have a need for autonomy. If those needs for individuality are not met, then after a while we begin to chafe under the expectations or the sense of community. And then we need empathy. It feels good to have somebody really be with us and understand what's going on. We also need honesty. We want to be able to say our truth. And then finally, I'm just going to rush through this one because I think I'm going over my time. But as part of this body of knowledge as well, it recognizes that sometimes when we talk about our feelings, there is a little sense of judgment that you shouldn't have been doing that. And so if we can name our feelings followed by the words by you, then it may be a feeling that has some judgment in it. And if we use that kind of language with the person that we are communicating with, then they maybe will get their back up and they won't be as open. So if we say I feel pressured by you or left out by you, this chart gives some alternatives of what might be some cleaner ways to express what are the feelings and needs that have been stirred up for us. All right, and I will pass this along to George.
Actually going to Jeanie.
I
Jeanie,
think it's
that's
my
right. I'm
turn.
sorry, Jeanie.
Okay. The LEAD, the A is appreciative inquiry. And while we know how important listening is, how important empathy is, asking the right questions makes such a difference in your coaching conversation. It was initially developed as a research method for studying and understanding organizations, developed by a fellow by the name of David Cooperrider, and his research project was to analyze what was not working and figure out how to fix it. And in the hospital where they were working and doing the research, they found that studying the strengths and the positive aspects of the system was very transformational. The right questions are what transform the mindset. Appreciative inquiry is asking the right question, and it's a focus on what works and what do we have to work with. The truly dangerous thing is asking the wrong question. Appreciative inquiry is what stands out in representing evocative coaching as a strengths-based model as opposed to a fix-it model. You see this little diagram here of the asset-based model is about look at what we've got here. But the deficit model is look at what's missing. And sometimes when you go into a coaching conversation, that's what they want to focus on first is what's not working. And so as coaches, we focus on the positives, that positive core of what works and what are the strengths. Because if we continue to search for problems, guess what? We're going to continue to find problems. And if we look for what is best and learn from it, then we can multiply our success. So it starts with two very different questions. What do we need to fix to make our teaching better, or what works well in your classroom? Imagine the difference, because the art of the positive question is what makes such a difference. And we use in our coaching with all of the leaders and the teachers that we are coaching, we use what we call an experimental, it's an interview, an appreciative interview, and it's based around 4 questions. And these 4 questions are, tell me about your best teaching experience or your best leading experience. And tell me about your core values. Who are you when you're at your best? What are the supporting conditions that enable you to be your best and do what you truly enjoy doing? And then we talk about what are your wishes? What are your aspirations? What are your hopes and dreams for the future of your particular class or your particular school or your district if you're working with a district leader? And we then take one of those wishes that we want to focus on and move it into create an experimental design that George he'll share a little bit about that with you in a few minutes. But there's so many examples of appreciative questions that you can ask. And when I went through an extensive appreciative inquiry training in Las Vegas and had the opportunity they sent us out with a partner to practice this particular experiment. And I guess I didn't pay much attention to how to frame the question because I was paired up with a pediatric anesthesiologist from the University of Colorado. And we sat down and I said, my first question was, tell me about your job this past week. And she burst into tears. And she said, I lost a patient, a new baby in the operating room. And so I held her hand and let her tell that. But then I said, after she finished and we, I, held her hand through that, I said, tell me about the best experience that you've had in your work. And her whole face lit up. And she talked about the patients that they had been able to share and the reason that they were taking this training. So I learned a valuable lesson about the way we frame our questions in that particular circumstance can make a difference. But appreciative inquiry, it also works in everyday conversations with friends, with family, and social situations. My grandchildren live next door, and when they would walk home from the nearby elementary school, they knew if the garage was open, Nani's home, come in and have a snack. Well, I would ask every day, how was school today? And guess what? I always got that one word answer, either boring or fun or just one word answer. So after I listened to Megan share some questions in one of our trainings that we were doing, the next day Mackenzie came in and I said, Mackenzie, tell me the best thing about school today. She went on for 15 minutes telling me about the teacher having them dress up like characters in the book they were reading and what part she got to play. And so then I discovered it worked with my spouse as well, because one evening, instead of saying, how was your day? I surprised him and I said, what was the best part of today for you? After his initial kind of questioning look, I got a lengthy story about the lunch that he had had with our son. So we do want to caution our coaches that appreciative inquiry it's not always, just like in dealing with that pediatric surgeon that I was with, we sometimes want to comfort them because there's an immediate issue that needs to be solved. But we don't want that to consume our leaders. We want to help them if they have student behavior issues, if they have a contractual issue that needs to be solved. We want to coach and effectively help them with those day-to-day issues. However, we don't want that to consume them. And what our goal is to give them wings to soar. And I love this illustration because we discover their strengths, identifying opportunities that they have to utilize their strengths, and to help them to discover the best of what is and to imagine the best of what can be. When we get them to talk about what strengths do you have and what opportunities do you have to use those strengths, and then have them frame their aspiration for what they would like for it to look like. And if those dreams came true, what would the results be? And that gives us the opportunity to enable their aspirations to become a reality. And then we focus on what coaching support can I provide to you to frame those aspirations and to really get the results that you're looking for. So appreciative inquiry starts with that first question. When we get through those questions, then we're able to put feet to their dreams and to design next steps. So George, tell us what that D in our LEAD model looks like.
Thanks, Jeanie. Oops. So as Jeanie said, at this point in our coaching conversation, we've listened, we've empathized, we've appreciated, but if we stop there, nothing changes. So that's why we move to the design process. Design is actually how the world changes. So we follow a flow. We define through listening and providing empathy. We discover what's working through appreciative inquiry. And then we take the time to dream about what could be and design what should be. And once we've got a design, then we deliver that design. We test it as we're delivering it, we reflect on it, and we improve it. And the coach guides this process through questions, not through answers. It's a repetitive process. It's not linear. It doesn't just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 3, but it moves through those 5 steps. It's a collaborative process. It isn't just up to the coach, and it relies on a process of brainstorming, not casual brainstorming, but structured brainstorming follows some very specific rules. The structure of brainstorming makes it more productive rather than a chaotic process. So innovation comes through smarter experimentation. You've heard of SMART goals, I know. We like to think of them as smarter goals because we add to them evaluating and refining. They start with a hypothesis. If we do this, then this will happen. And it includes all the elements we know that are important to conduct an experiment. So completing this experimental design, either on a piece of paper, like the one you see in front of you, or just in our heads as we have a discussion, it provides a guide for our discussion. So once we've got that hypothesis, we can say, well, how does that connect to the work we're supposed to do? What are the strategies that we use? That's where brainstorming really comes in. What's the timeline? How are we going to support this? What resources do we need? What data are we going to collect? All those things that you know go into a good plan also go into a design experiment. So if we're intentional, and we end these with a commitment. So it's not a commitment of, did we create a great plan? It's a commitment of, how likely are you to implement this, to conduct this experiment? And we've learned that if we don't get an answer of at least an 8 on a 10-point scale, then we've got more work to do in the design process. So if we are intentional in listening, in empathizing, in appreciating and designing, that's when we can create a new reality. We share this work in webinars like this one, but also in 3 books. Megan and her husband Bob wrote Evocative Coaching and Evoking Greatness, which outline the principles of evocative coaching in much better detail than what we've done today. And also there's a workbook to go along with the study of these works that Jeanie and I and another colleague put together that have the exercises to go along with each step. We'll leave you, you'll receive in your handout something that we call a cheat sheet for evocative coaching that provides prompts for the listening part of the conversation, for the expressing empathy, for questions to ask in the appreciative inquiry process, and things to think about as you design next steps. So that will also be provided to you. Our goal is, as you can remember from the beginning, to improve organizations one conversation at a time, and we'd love to continue that conversation with you. And finally, we're to the end of our presentation, just about on time, and we have time to respond to any questions that you've had, either during or right now.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, George, Megan, and Jeanie. This was so insightful. I was just thinking not only for our professional lives, but also for our personal lives, as Jeanie was telling with her grandsons. And I think it was really, really insightful. And actually, it was so clear that I think there are no pending questions on the chat. Every question I picked up was on if we were going to send the materials, the resources, the presentations. So right after this session, you will receive an email with the presentation, with the recording, with the sheets and the all of the resources that Megan, George, and Jeanie so generously have shared with us to send over to you. I just want to finish on and highlight a couple things. I know we are on the finish time, but I just want to end on that note, George, of let's dream, but let's not dream alone. Let's dream together. And just quickly go over these four steps of the model. So first, listening to the others, listening to the stories that the others are bringing in. That's right. So people coming with stories, using the wait and see tip that Jeannie was sharing, and understanding that listening is being silent, right? And then how to express empathy and understand that people come with needs and with feelings. And for that, use Megan's resources and look at the feelings. So understand that there's a whole array of different feelings and needs. And so meeting people where they are and connecting instead of correcting. And then delving into the minds of the people through the appreciative inquiry tips that Jeannie was sharing, making the right questions, and last, designing a way forward, right? So if we get these four steps right, um, we are having the right conversations, and as Jeannie was saying as well, this can be really transformative. So what we try to do through Best School to Work and this kind of models that we're trying to enhance is transform, is change. And I felt transformed as I was listening to this amazing workshop. And I really hope that we can get to as many educators as we can, because this, by changing and tweaking some things, we can really, really change and transform experiences, and also address like people's frustrations, people leaving the profession. So things can be changed. We can transform lives one step at a time, one conversation at a time, as George was saying. So, on that note, I just want to say a huge thank you, George, Megan, and Jeannie, and also invite our audience to learn more about Best School to Work as well, our program, to understand how people are feeling about their coaches and about these processes, in order to try to see what needs to be strengthened and what needs to be improved. This is what we try to do with Best School to Work, to give this diagnosis and this big picture of what culture looks like. So we invite you to go to our website. I know that my colleague Daniel is dropping the links on the chat. So bestschooltowork.com. So on that note, thank you so much. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thank you, and see you on our next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, for being such a good listener. You did a great job of sharing what you learned today.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you. Bye-bye.